Good morning. Today in our literature text, we're focusing in on the question number 3, what strategies and resources do I use to figure out unknown vocabulary? Question number 4, what is literary text really about? And question number 5, how does interaction with text provoke thinking and response? We're going to be going into a few different learning targets today as we close read again another section from Rogue Wave, this time Rogue Wave, page 7 and 8. With this close read, we're going to focus on, in the first reading, what the text says, second reading, how the text says it, and the third reading, why that text matters. As we look at these three different phases, we're going to focus in on the learning targets of I can determine the central ideas of a text and provide an objective summary, as well as I can determine the meaning of words and phrases as they're used in text, including figurative and connotative meanings. Analyze the impact of word choice on meaning and tone. So today we're going to look in our literature packets at literature learning target number 5. We've covered this one already before, and I think you already have the notes for this as well. We're going to first look at making an objective summary of the paragraph that we've been given. Within an objective summary, if you notice, regardless of what part I'm pulling, what paragraph I'm pulling from Rogue Wave, our summary should tie in to the conflict, because that conflict is the most universal part of the main plot. So your conflict in the summary of the section that I'm giving today should be what you focus on as you put that paragraph into your own words. Don't forget to make sure the focus of the paragraph is on the conflict of that paragraph or paragraphs. We're going to also focus in on learning target number 11. Learning target number 11 says I can determine how an author uses the meaning of words and phrases, including figurative and connotative meanings in a text. To put that into your own words, instead of showing you the definitions and how I got there this time, I just put it into my own words so that you can see it directly. And to put it into your own words, you would decide how the author uses the meaning of words or phrases, including figurative, which means not literal but metaphorical meaning, and connotative, which is the feeling or the implied meaning a word gives you. So words have their dictionary definitions, but they also have figurative understandings as well as connotative understandings. In other words, none of which are the literal meaning of what the word is. We bring emotion, we bring implied meaning to words through language. A lot of times whenever you see this idea of having to figure out how to decide how the author uses the meaning of words in a figurative or connotative way, you're going to see a question begin with how the author and then the answer should begin, like how the author determines the meaning of words. So the author chooses to reveal blah, or to show blah, to imply, to emphasize, to suggest, to indicate, to foreshadow, or to highlight. All of these terms are how you want to begin when you're answering the question for how the author uses different word meanings. So you want to say that the author is trying to reveal something, to show something, to hint or imply at something, to emphasize, in other words, draw attention to something, to suggest, to indicate, that's just a fancy word for show, to highlight, in other words, to point a light on, to point out, same as emphasize. I think this one right here is the most important because this definition comes up in other areas of literature. That's to foreshadow. Foreshadow by definition is to hint at other future events within a story. And in fact, this new story we're going to be reading this week, you're going to see you're going to be asked a question about how do you see foreshadowing of events to come. So foreshadowing is something that writers like to do to hint at something that's going to take place in the future. I've mentioned to a couple people during writing time to maybe embed some foreshadowing at the beginning of their piece for the conflict that's about to take place. So they're going to hint at future things that will happen in the story. But today we are going to look at why the author uses specific words, and they're using them to do one of these areas down here. So you're going to have to begin with one of these type of areas in order to explain that question. That is going to come in our second phase of reading. Our first phase is focusing on that summary. So you're going to read the section. You'll highlight a key sentence that you think helps to give you the main idea for each of those paragraphs. And then you're going to explain and tell us what your summary is for that section as well. So make sure that you do that. As I'm looking at it, I realize that was tomorrow's, but the first section is the same. So you're going to have multiple paragraphs to look at, and you're going to have to summarize what you think the key events are within that paragraph. So read over the 2 paragraphs and then summarize each paragraph. For a paragraph, really a solid sentence summary is all you need to be able to solidly answer that question. As I just mentioned, phase 2 is focusing in on learning target number 11 to determine how the author uses the meaning of words, both figurative and connotative. And so I'm asking you to look at specific examples of figurative language. What examples can you spot that are in fact figurative language? Because before we can look at how the author uses figurative meanings of words, we have to find examples of figurative language in the text. And so that brings us to our last learning target, which is learning target number 18. And so that is saying I can interpret figures of speech, figurative, literary, and mythological allusions in context. In regular language, that means they're going to explain what figurative language and allusions, what they are as used in the text. So explain the figurative language and the allusions, explain the comparisons, explain what they're alluding to. So figurative language, some of the popular ones, simile, comparing with like or as, metaphor, comparing to unlike things, hyperbole and exaggeration, personification, giving human qualities to the unhuman, and symbol, an object with a deeper meaning. An allusion, which we're not getting into in this piece, but maybe in future pieces, is a reference in a specific story to a person, place, or thing or idea from another story, or maybe a reference from history or mythology. So when we reference one story in another, that's an allusion. So again, we're going to focus on the figurative meaning of words. And so to do that, we really do have to find the examples of figurative language. There are 2 clear ones that I found. Maybe you can find something that I haven't found in these paragraphs, but there's definitely one as a minimum in each paragraph. And I want you to be able to find them by looking through over your second reading of the text and really focusing in on where the figurative language is found and explain what the figurative language is, interpret the figurative language or explain what's happening within each example. The last phase of reading is where you're getting into that learning target number 11, of really focusing in on how the author uses that figurative language. So as you read that third and final time, I want you to choose to see why the author used figurative language in the piece. Like, what was the effect that they were looking to create by using it? So by doing so, you have to answer the question, how does the author use figurative language in the paragraph? There's nothing you need to highlight for that third phase reading, but you do want to read over it a third time and really think about the how the author uses the figurative language. Was it meant, and I even give you an example here to begin. The author uses so if it's a metaphor, you'd say the author uses the metaphor to, and then either say to reveal, to show, to imply, to emphasize, to suggest, to indicate, to foreshadow, or to highlight something. So tell me, for what reason is this figurative language used? What is it doing to this section, to the action of this section, to the characters of the section? How is it providing a purpose within that piece? I need you to explain that purpose that the figurative language is using by explaining how the author is using it. And make sure you begin your sentence in this manner. And we'll discuss it at the end of class. So go ahead and get working on your reading activity.